Martin, welcome to the podcast. You've had such an incredible career across many sectors: professional services, financial services, real estate, and now retail. You've led businesses through the financial crisis, through the pandemic, now through the geopolitical uncertainty that we're navigating through. What do you see as some of the biggest opportunities and challenges that businesses are facing today?
Yeah, I think in all those experiences, I think I learned many lessons. I think 2008 was very clearly an underestimation of risk, especially concentration risk. But it also was not without opportunities. Yeah. And whenever anyone talks about 2008 or even the pandemic, they talk about all the risks and all the horrors that emerged in both of those crises, but they don't talk about the opportunities. And I saw so many opportunities arise in some of those sectors. There were different ones, but nevertheless, there were opportunities. And you tend to take risks less seriously when you're doing really well and you're forecasting a wonderful future ahead. But when things are really gloomy, you then tend to over-focus on risks and you don't actually really focus on opportunities. So the lesson is you've got to focus on both equally at all times, whatever part of the cycle you're in. Today, I think there are so many geopolitical risks are getting really scary because they could, and they may already have, upset the world order as we've known it for 30 years. And certainly for a retailer, supply chain issues that could arise from either tariffs or big trade wars that could happen, more countries becoming more insular, that is also potentially as scary as one of those two.
Just picking up on that point around risks, and we see it even more now with technological risk as much as it's geopolitical risk, as much as it's all the other things that we worry about. But in terms of resilience in organisations, how do you think businesses is thinking about that? Given what you've just talked about, the financial crisis and what we've been through, do you think businesses look at resilience in a different way now?
Yeah, I think people are much, much more aware of risks. I think boards have done a much better job at not just looking just at upside or whatever is presented to them, but having proper assessments of risks. And it's not boards that now ask for proper risk assessments. It's management teams come up with plans.
So sustainable growth, in the context of what we've just talked about, delivering sustainable growth is something that is on every board's agenda. Yeah. And I know that the plan for better is at the heart of Sainsbury's strategy. Yeah. Could you share a little bit more about what that is and how that really supports sustainable growth for your business?
A fact, and not to be denied, even if it's denied by some, climate change is having a big effect on supply chain. Fact. So we need to keep our focus on our consumer and their needs. We also need to keep in mind that that change has really affected the people who produce our products, our food, especially farmers. And then, of course, we need to be very aware of the whole chain and what that's impacting, how that's impacting on the planet. And if I give you one good example of how that has affected us. So a very simple characterization of past relationship between retailers and farmers and retailers and producers. It was, how cheaply can you buy it? And used to be very short-lived contracts. Now, with the need to invest, you need to make sure that you help those producers, the farmers, to make sure that they can have a longer contract to be able to invest, to help them deal with climate change. So that's one of the big changes that has happened. So last year, together with the corporate social responsibility and sustainability committee, we went to visit a farm. And there you see it, the best example I've ever seen of the impact climate change has on farms. This grew salads, essentially, salad stuff, lettuces, celery, etc. And basically, in summer, it was too hot for the plants that were growing. And even if you put water on them, it evaporated straight away. In winter, it was flooded. You could see it. And we could see it round the other farms that were in the vicinity. So what they did was invested in reservoirs with connections to the farms. So when there was a lot of rain, it was taken through the pipes into the reservoirs, and then when it was dry, it went the other way. Brilliant. But you can't do that if you don't know whether Sainsbury's is going to buy salads from them next year. Long-term contracts are the answer to enable the growers to not only keep supplying, but keep supplying profitably.
And that's a really lovely example in a fast-moving consumer world, how long-term thinking does play out, right? Because you're enabling long-term investment for the benefit of both the farmers and your organisation. And we'll talk a little bit about the investments that you as an organisation have made into sort of, affordable products for consumers. At Sainsbury's, you work with over 150,000 British farmers and over 96,000 stakeholders. So that's a very big ecosystem that you work within. And you've talked about helping those farmers think long term. Have you seen that focus on the sustainability and supporting them change the relationship, or how's that relationship evolving as you look forward?
I think the relationship is a very different relationship. It doesn't mean that we're not looking at who makes what in every transaction, both the producer as well as us as the retailer. You've obviously got to have an economic arrangement that suits both sides. But I think the change is that it's no longer short-term, no longer about the minimum amount that we can pay. It's about a very long-term relationship. So we sign 10-year deals now, which then enables those producers to invest.
But I just want to talk a bit about your history. So Sainsbury's celebrated 150 years, a bit like KPMG a few years ago. Innovation's been quite important in your sort of history. If I'm right, you opened the first self-service store back in the 1950s. 50. Wow, I can't even, So, a bit of a leader there. How does that sort of history of, wanting to lead the way, driving innovation, influence the organisation that you're leading today? And what I'm really interested in is what's the next wave of innovation?
Two very good questions. Let me try and answer them. So I think I often refer to, when we have big decisions to make, I often refer to our history and what our predecessors did. And if you think about the way we changed in 1950, started to change from a big long store with 2 counters, and you went from one place to the other to get your bits, and then to today's model of self-service. That's pretty revolutionary stuff. And so when we are faced with big challenges and, how on earth do you expect us to go from X to Y? I say, well, our predecessors did it, so why can't we? Which I think is very helpful. So there's all sorts of innovation, of course, besides how to serve customers. I think possibly the most recent wave of innovation for us is innovation in food. So as more people shop from us, as more people also want more treats from us, the products that we have launched over the last year under the brand of Taste the Difference have been extremely, extremely welcome. So you can get all your basics, but you can get all the Taste the Difference food. And over the last few years, that brand has been growing by 15% per annum. So that's one. I think possibly working with farmers I've mentioned, that's a massive, massive mindset shift from dealing for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years to doing 10-year deals with growers. But I think the other one that is quite important, I think, is today is the investment in data. And Nectar is a very, very good example. And how is it going in the future? More of that, no doubt. So if you think about it, the adverts used to be in the papers by all retailers, a bottle of gin is down by X, come and buy one. Now we do personalized contact with our customers and say, here are some offers for you. That is a real change, really innovative way of dealing with customers and offering them value.
Nectar is one of the world's leading loyalty programs,
Yep.
and you have over 17 million digital
Yep.
subscribers. Yep. How impactful has Nectar been in helping deliver value for customers?
We've got a participation rate of 85% from our customers.
Wow.
Which is very high for something that was only started a few years ago.
Yeah, and when you talk about using Nectar to also help you be successful in delivering excellent value to your customers, is it because of that personalization, the ability to personalize opportunity?
It's that, but also the general loyalty that it buys as well, because everyone would like their grocery bills to be lower. It's probably saved a few billion pounds for our customers because number one, when you go into one of our stores, it's very, very clear what's Nectar prices and what is not. It's very, very clear. The purple is really taken over. And then on top of that, we've got the individual personalization of Nectar prices, which I think makes it even more attractive.
So Sainsbury's has 140,000 employees, 600 supermarkets, 800 convenience stores, and let's not forget the Argos brand as well, which is 700 shops or outlets. And consumers have been facing into the cost of living crisis. But how does Sainsbury's juggle that kind of need and to deliver best quality at competitive prices, especially when you're going through very difficult times?
Well, during the cost of living crisis, it was very simple. We had a Save to Invest program where we were making savings roughly double the rate we'd done over the previous 4 years. And over the last 4 years, we've invested directly into prices to make sure we can be as affordable to all as possible. We've invested £1 billion into prices. So that's all coming from savings that we've done elsewhere. That is the priority, consumers' priority, and that's what we've done.
KPMG's recent consumer research shows that environmental sustainability is one of the top 3 purchasing drivers for only 9% of consumers and people. Does that reflect what you're seeing in your industry or what you're seeing in your business? And how can sustainable buying increase at a time when price remains sort of such an important decision-making factor for consumers?
Well, price is obviously very, very important. Quality is very, very important. And that's why, to go back to Taste the Difference as well, you offer different levels of quality and innovation to consumers. Consumers like that choice, like to be able to buy X, a piece of bacon from one price range, but then buy a piece of fish that is at a higher price. But my own experience of what I hear from customers, what I see when I go around stores and talk to customers, is that they want us to be as respectful of the planet as we possibly can be, and though that may be a smaller minority than obviously compared to, say, price, but I think it's a very, very important one, and you don't want to lose those customers. Plus, it's the right thing to do. And I think businesses should always remember what is the right thing to do. And we all know that if we don't take care of this planet, we're all going to suffer in the future, definitely future generations.
You've just talked about sort of the right thing to do and for the planet. And we talk often about, can you meet the needs of people, planet and profit? We're talking a little bit about profit. We talked about a little bit about planet. And obviously, as an employer of lots of individuals, how do you balance that? How do you balance those decisions in your boardroom?
Well, number one, you have to have a really good CEO and a very good management team to balance it. And they do. And they do it, I would say, every minute of the day. That is the knack that they have. But it's also, we've shown a lot of self-help. So that £1 billion investment in price, especially when consumers really needed it, that came funded by savings we made elsewhere. So that, if you like, we didn't take from the sustainability budget, or we didn't take it from quality. That was an additional amount. And we intend to keep making those investments to make sure that we produce good quality food at prices people can afford. That's number one. But you can't just trash the planet any more than has been trashed so far.
I think you recently announced 40 new stores to be opened.
Yeah.
That's a significant investment in sort of the physical store environment. And there's a lot of conversation around smart cities and what does the city of the future look like? What does the supermarket of the future look like? I'd love to get your views on how you see that evolving.
To some extent, our real estate is what it is, because what we're doing with the 40, I mean, that is the highest investment for a decade. And that partly is because we found some opportunities to be in some areas where we're not present. But also it's partly to do with the fact that we are growing market share. And again, we have grown market share in the last few years more than we've done the previous decade. 40 new stores when you've got 1,400, 600 supermarkets and 800 is a significant number, but it's not going to change the sort of the overall picture. And our overall picture is actually more focused on doing a better job within the store. So one of the big initiatives we're doing this year, for example, is making more space for food. There is more demand for food from our customers. And we've got a big program in the hundreds of stores where we're moving general merchandise more to online, so we make more space for food.
So you talked about sort of growing market share the fastest over the last decade, which is quite an achievement in such a competitive market.
Yeah.
I'd really be interested in understanding how you've done that.
Number one, price. Price is very important to our consumers, to our customers. Two is the focus on quality food. And the third thing in terms of growth is the sort of the intangible. There is a feeling that Sainsbury's is a good company to shop at, which I think is really important in terms of reputation. And then finally, nectar prices have been really helpful to increasing our market share.
It strikes me that technology is a really core part of enabling you as an organisation to maximise on that data, to service your customers, like things like the Nectar programme we just talked about. How does Sainsbury's look at technology? How are you using AI? What's your sort of investment looking like in that space?
A very good example of investment in technology is in dealing with food waste, and by using AI to help us forecast better in the future, we will reduce food waste.
In October last year, KPMG entered into a partnership with a charity called FareShare, and I'm delighted to see that Sainsbury's is also a partner of FareShare. I know you do a lot of work to implement initiatives around food wastage. I'd love to be able to hear a little bit more about what you're doing.
Yeah, be very clear. Food waste, number one, isn't probably in three of the chain. It's with the growers as well. There's food waste on the premises and in growers. There's definitely food waste at the retailer, and there's obviously a significant amount of food waste at the consumer end.
Yeah.
So it's all three. Now, the one that we can control. Number one, point number one is this is not because we are useless and inefficient. This is partly because of the British weather. So you think you're heading in for a period of sunshine, so you start ordering barbecue stuff, and then it rains for a month. This has happened, or the other way around, when you don't have enough and you've actually got legs of lamb that people are not going to use because they want to be in the garden. So it's forecasting, because you're talking about, we get food from around 80 countries around the world. You've got to do those orders well in advance of consumer needs on the day. It's pretty difficult to get it at the right amount in each of the store, depending on the weather and depending on whatever else happens. But there is food waste. And the way we do that is actually, especially through Neighbourly, an organization that helps us distribute it to those people who need it most. So we do that to try and minimize the damage that we would create if we throw it away, which we don't, because we've got other uses for it, whether it's animal feed or anaerobic digestion. There are other ways, but the first objective is to get it to people who would like that food free, and we do that.
Yeah, I think for our audience, sometimes you don't realise what happens in the background. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we go into a store and you sort of look and you find what you need and you walk out. You don't, sometimes recognise what is actually happening around.
And if you visit the distribution centres that I have, it is awesome what happens, because everything comes in by product, which then has to be unpacked and then put into different stores, and then out into the stores and then onto the shelves. That, from ordering to delivery on the shelf, is a massive operation.
And very timely.
It's awesome.
We talked about the 140,000 employees across Sainsbury's.
Yep.
And if I'm correct, Sainsbury's was one of only 2 retailers featured in the Times top 50 employers for gender equity in 2024. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to understand how you would define the hallmarks of your culture, because that's ultimately what kind of gets an organisation like Sainsbury's into that list. How would you describe it?
Well, it's really interesting. A little bit of history. We lost a third of our workforce in World War I because they were men. We then put up training. I wasn't there, by the way. There was a third of workforce goes. You have to recruit. There were no men available, so we decided to recruit women into the workforce and train them. And I think that was probably one of the most innovative responses to a crisis and opportunity. And we've always had a really good balance between men and women working, especially in the important roles of facing consumers. We just, in that culture that we inherited, was always a deep respect for individuals. And that is a mindset that is embedded at the board and in the management. And I think that's why we are as successful as we are, because of that mindset. I'm very pleased that we were in that league.
You're absolutely right. how people feel at work,
Yeah.
and that's how we then show up with
Yeah.
our colleagues and our clients or customers or whoever we're interacting with, and that's what kind of comes through in this. As we touched on earlier, you've led organizations through some incredible challenges, and that requires strong leadership. What does impactful, strong leadership look like to you?
To me, leadership is understanding the purpose of the company and understanding the vision, and then having very clear. The first question was about opportunities and risks. You've got to be very, very clear what those opportunities are and what those risks are. Then it's about enabling the organization. So this organization, is not about me. The organization is about the 140,000 people who we're lucky that they work for us, because they are the people who face the consumer. And it's understanding that every person in the organization has a role to play, and encouraging them to try and aim for those strategic points that you're trying to head them towards. It's not about what you personally do. It's about enabling the organization to see the risks properly, enabling the organization to see the opportunities properly. And so it's about challenging that we've got the right strategy, and then making sure that you execute on a day-by-day basis.
As you look back over your career, Martin, and if you could go back to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
I'm not sure I thought I'd still be working now. So I would probably say to my 30-year-old self, calm down. It's more of a marathon than a sprint.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. I think you start off when you're much, much younger than I am now, thinking everything's got to be achieved in sort of ASAP, urgently. And actually, I would say probably a better work-life balance might have gone down better than the focus on work.
I think that's a really good bit of advice especially for the Gen Zs and the new and the sort of incoming Gen Alpha. It is a marathon, not a sprint, because we are inevitably working longer. We talked a lot about the role of Sainsbury's in sort of helping people sustain themselves, etc. How do you sustain yourself?
Through work, partly. I love my work. I really enjoy working. I really enjoy working at Sainsbury's. It's a great company with a great purpose and with an amazing culture and values. So to be very honest, coming into the office, because I also like being in the office, I think it's, what a privilege to be able to do that. But then for good or bad, I'm an Arsenal supporter, and I was a season ticket holder for about 28 years. That certainly is one of my passions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I think the point you've just said there about purpose, culture and values, that really sums up what people really want from a day job and what people want from their work and how people want to be fulfilled, right? Because you sort of see a sense of connection. And that brings me to the big three themes, I think, that are emerging from our conversation. The first is risks. I think people, and especially in this current environment, we all think about risks as a negative downside. Of course, there are risks. It's how you face into them, but more importantly, how you look at them as opportunities. Risks is central to opportunities as much as it is about protection and resilience. I take away a big theme around investment, and you've just touched on so many levels and layers of investment that you face into at Sainsbury's, whether it's enabling your producers and making sure that the supply chain is sustainable long term, but you're helping each other all the way through. Absolutely. You've talked about your investment in real estate, which is a very significant investment, and that is a commitment to the future of retail and how that will pan out. You've talked about the investment in technology and data, again, which will drive improved service, customer service, and talked about having the best technology. Clearly, clearly you're all about staying ahead of innovation and being at the front of it. And what a remarkable short story about how you save to invest and what you've done as an organisation to really help consumers by investing in margin. And that, you know, if I look at all the different layers, it is very, comes across, it's about investment, but investment in a partnerial way.
Yeah, absolutely right.
You know, how do we help others by helping, you know, by investing? So that, and then the third big sort of theme comes back to your sustain yourself, purpose, values, culture. It comes back to you clearly carry a sense of responsibility, whether that's around the end-to-end, beginning to end of the supply chain, short-term to long-term. You talked about respect for the individuals and how you interact with each other, and your qualities of leadership, impactful leadership, all come back to that sort of essence. So I think those are the three big buckets. I mean, there's so much more, but I like to try and kind of take away the summary. That is what I take away from this conversation. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you.